Hello, I'm Dire Wolf, and today we are going to continue reading The Red Pyramid by Rick Riordan. I'm still really new to the recording thing. This is only my second video. So messing around with some of the different stuff. Did figure out how to flip it so that it actually looks correct now. And I can do it. But stuff will look the right direction to you. Last time, when I was trying to show you some of the pictures of the hieroglyphs, they were flipped because I forgot to flip the screen. So, hopefully that fixes that problem. Alright, so, last time Carter was narrating. He narrated the first two chapters and they blew up some stuff. And we got introduced to, right at the end was a pretty good cliffhanger. A couple of people had shown up and sounded like they were deciding, they were talking about destroying them. We don't know who the them was. We're hoping it wasn't Carter and Sadie, which I'm guessing it's not because lots of the book left, but we're going to see what's going on now. Alright, chapter 3 is narrated by Sadie. I know that it says Sadie has a British accent. I'm not going to try and do a British accent. Various reasons boiling down to I would be too focused on trying to do a halfway decent British accent, which probably wouldn't work anyway, to be able to really get into the story and have a good, be able to pay attention to what was going on. So, I'm not going to do a British accent, but even though it says she's supposed to. So, alright. Chapter 3, Imprisoned with My Cat. Her cat? Her cat was back at her grandparents'. Alright. By Sadie. Give me the bloody mic! Okay, see, their sensei wrote it that way. So, I'll probably be going back and forth between my own accent and just naturally falling into a semblance of an English accent just because of the way it's phrased, so we'll see. Hello, Sadie here. My brother's a rubbish storyteller. Sorry about that, but now you've got me, so all is well. Let's see. The explosion. Rosetta Stone in a billion pieces. Fiery evil bloke. Dad boxed in a coffin. Creepy Frenchman and Arab girl with the knife. Us passing out. Right. Well, there. She just told us what got us caught up, didn't she? So when I woke up, the police were rushing about, as you might expect. They separated me from my brother. I didn't really mind that part. He's a pain anyway. But they locked me in the curator's office for ages. And yes, they used our bicycle chain to do it. Cretins. I was shattered, of course. I'd just been knocked out by a fiery whatever it was. I'd watched our dad get packed in a sarcophagus and shot through the floor. I tried to tell the police all about that, but did they care? No. Worst of all, I had a lingering chill, as if someone was pushing ice-cold needles into the back of my neck. Ooh. Ugh. It had started when I looked at those blue glowing words Dad had drawn on the Rosetta Stone, and I knew what they meant. A family disease? Perhaps. Can knowledge of boring Egyptian stuff be hereditary? With my luck. Long after my gum had gone stale, a policewoman finally retrieved me from the curator's office. She asked me no questions, she just trundled me into a police car and took me home. Even then, I wasn't allowed to explain to Gran and Grips. The policewoman just tossed me into my room and I waited. And waited. I don't like waiting. No, she didn't sound like the type. I paced the floor. My room was nothing posh, just an attic space with a window and a bed and a desk. There wasn't much to do. Muffin sniffed my legs and her tail puffed up like a bottle brush. Ooh, the interesting cat knows something's up. I suppose she doesn't fancy the smell of museums. She hissed and disappeared under the bed. Thanks a lot, I muttered. I opened the door, but the policewoman was standing guard. The inspector will be with you in a moment, she told me. Please stay inside. I could see downstairs, just a glimpse of Gramps pacing the room, wringing his hands, while Carter and a police inspector talked on the sofa. I couldn't make out what they were saying. Could I just use the loo? I asked the nice officer. No, she closed the door in my face. As if I might rig an explosion in the toilet. Honestly. I dug out my iPod and scrolled through my playlist. Nothing struck me. I threw it on my bed in disgust. When I'm too distracted for music, that is a very sad thing. That is sad. Music helps a lot in a lot of situations. Maybe not this one, though. It's kind of a big thing going on. Right. I wondered why Carter got to talk to the police first. It wasn't fair. Well, we see the 12-year-old side of her here. I fiddled with the necklace Dad had given me. I'd never been sure what the symbol meant. Carter's was obviously an eye, but mine looked a bit like an angel, or perhaps a killer alien robot. Okay. It has a picture. I kind of agree with the bit like an angel part. Not sure about the killer alien robot, but there it is. So that's what her necklace is like. Why on earth had Dad asked if I still had it? I did. It's protective, like Carter's is. Of course I still had it. It was the only gift he'd ever given me. Well, apart from Muffin, and with the cat's attitude, I'm not sure I would call her a proper gift. Dad had practically abandoned me at age 6, after all. The necklace was my one link to him. On good days, I would stare at it and remember him fondly. On bad days, which were much more frequent, I would fling it across the room and stomp on it and curse him for not being around, which I found quite therapeutic. But in the end, I always put it back on. At any rate, during the weirdness at the museum, and I'm not making this up, the necklace got hotter. I nearly took it off, but couldn't help wondering if it truly was protecting me somehow. Yep, I bet you it was. I'll make things right, Dad had said, with that guilty look he often gives me. Well, colossal fail, Dad. What had he been thinking? I wanted to believe it had been a bad dream. The glowing hieroglyphs, the snake staff, the coffin, things like that simply don't happen. But I knew better. I couldn't dream anything as horrifying as that fiery man's face when he'd turned on us. Soon, boy, he'd told Carter, as if he intended to track us down. Just the idea made my hands tremble. I also couldn't help wondering about our stop at Cleopatra's Needle. How Dad had insisted on seeing it, as if he were stealing his courage, as if what he did at the British Museum had something to do with my mum. Like bringing her back from the dead, maybe? I still think that's what he was trying to do. I said it would go wrong, and guess what? Bringing people back. Never a good idea. Alright. My eyes wandered across my room and fixed on my desk. No, I thought. Not going to do it. What's she not going to do? But I walked over and opened the drawer. I shoved aside a few old mags, my stash of sweets, a stack of math homework I'd forgotten to hand in, and a few pictures of me and my mates, Liz and Emma, trying on ridiculous hats in Camden Market. And there at the bottom of it all was the picture of Mum. Oh, that's what she's doing. Gran and Gramps have loads of pictures. They keep a shrine to Ruby in the hall cupboard. Mom's childhood artwork, her O-level results, her graduation picture from university, her favorite jewelry. It's quite mental. I was determined not to be like them, living in the past. I barely remembered Mum. After all, nothing could change the fact she was dead. But I did keep the one picture. It was of Mum and me at our house in Los Angeles just after I was born. She stood out on the balcony, the Pacific Ocean behind her, holding a wrinkled, pudgy lump of a baby that would someday grow up to be yours truly. Baby me was not much to look at, but Mum was gorgeous, even in shorts and a tattered t-shirt. Her eyes were deep blue, her blonde hair was clipped back, her skin was perfect. Quite depressing compared to mine. People always say I look like her, but I couldn't even get the spot off my chin, much less look so mature and beautiful. Well, that's because you're not fully grown yet. Stop smirking, Carter. The photo fascinated me because I hardly remembered our lives together at all. But the main reason I'd kept the photo was because of the symbol on Mum's t-shirt. One of those life symbols. An ankh. Ooh! Wasn't that, I gotta go this way. Wasn't that... In the other chapter, didn't someone say something about per ankh or something like that? My dead mother wearing the symbol for life. Nothing could have been sadder. But she smiled at the camera as if she knew a secret, as if my dad and she were sharing a private joke. Something tugged at the back of my mind. That stocky man in... Ooh, she remembered! That stocky man in the trench coat who'd been arguing with Dad across the street. He'd said something about the per-onk. Had he meant onk as in the symbol for life? And if so, what was a per? I suppose he didn't mean pear as in the fruit. Oh, must be pronounced pear. Sorry, it's P-E-R. Pear is in the fruit. So per-onk. Per-onk. Okay. I had an eerie feeling that if I saw the words per-onk written in hieroglyphics, I would know what they meant. Well, that'd be one way to figure it out. I put down the picture of Mom. I picked up a pencil and turned over one of my old homework papers. I wondered what would happen if I tried to draw the words per-onk. Would the right design just occur to me? See, I like her. She thinks of this stuff. It hasn't said she tried it yet, but you can bet she's going to. Like, she thinks, well, would this work? Can I figure this out? Whereas Carter was just kind of a lot more cautious. She's I'm going to figure it out. I want to know. As I touched pencil to paper, my bedroom door opened. Oh, man. Miss Kane? I whirled and dropped the pencil. A police inspector stood frowning in my doorway. What are you doing? Maths, I said. Maths. That always sounds a little weird to me. Just one of those differences. Mathematics. Actually, we don't say mathematics, really. We just say math. We don't have the S on there. Maths, I said. My ceiling was quite low, so the inspector had to stoop to come in. He wore a lint-colored suit that matched his gray hair and his ashen face. Now then, Sadie, I'm Chief Inspector Williams. Let's have a chat, shall we? Sit down. I didn't sit, and neither did he, which must have annoyed him. It's hard to look in charge when you're hunched over like Quasimodo. Tell me everything, please, he said, from the time your father came round to get you. I already told the police at the museum. Again, if you don't mind. So I told him everything. Why not? His left eyebrow crept higher and higher as I told him the strange bits like the glowing letters and serpent staff. Well, Sadie, Inspector Williams said, you've got quite an imagination. I'm not lying, Inspector, and I think your eyebrow is trying to escape. I'm not lying, and your eyebrow's trying to escape. He tried to look at his own eyebrows, then scowled. I like her. Now, Sadie, I'm sure this is very hard on you. I understand you want to protect your father's reputation, but he's gone now. You mean through the floor in a coffin? I insisted. He's not dead. Inspector Williams spread his hands. Sadie, I'm very sorry, but we must find out why he did this act of what? He cleared his throat uncomfortably. Your father destroyed priceless artifacts and apparently killed himself in the process. We'd very much like to know why. I stared at him. Are you saying my father's a terrorist? Are you mad? We've made calls to some of your father's associates. I understand his behavior has been erratic since your mother's death. He'd become withdrawn and obsessive in his studies, spending more and more time in Egypt. He's a bloody Egyptologist. You should be looking for him, not asking stupid questions. Sadie, he said, and I could hear in his voice that he was resisting the urge to strangle me. Sadie. Strangely, I get this a lot from adults. Well, I'm saying I like her. Kids that act like that. Yeah. Yeah. There are extremist groups in England. EG. I'm looking at... Alright. Sorry, we're just gonna start that paragraph over. Sadie, he said, and I could hear in his voice that he was resisting the urge to strangle me. Strangely, I get this a lot from adults. There are extremist groups in Egypt that object to Egyptian artifacts being kept in other countries' museums. These people might have approached your father. Perhaps in his state, your father became an easy target for them. If you've heard him mention any names... I stormed past him to the window. I was so angry I could hardly think. I refused to believe Dad was dead. No, no, no. And a terrorist? Please. Why did adults have to be so thick? They'd always say, tell the truth, and when you do, they don't believe you. What's the point? I stared down at the dark street. Suddenly, the that cold, tingly feeling got worse than ever. I focused on the dead tree where I'd met Dad earlier. Standing there now, in the dim light of a street lamp, looking up at me, was the pudgy bloke in the black trench coat and the round glasses and the fedora. The man Dad had called Amos. I suppose I should have felt threatened by an odd man staring up at me in the dark of night, but his expression was full of concern, and he looked so familiar it was driving me mad that I couldn't remember why. Behind me the inspector cleared his throat. Sadie, no one blames you for the attack on the museum. We understand you were dragged into this against your will. I turned from the window. Against my will? I chained the curator in his office. The inspector's eyebrow started to creep up again. Be that as it may, surely you didn't understand what your father meant to do. Possibly your brother was involved? I snorted. Carter, please. So you are determined to protect him as well. You consider him a proper brother, do you? I couldn't believe it. I wanted to smack his face. What's that supposed to mean? Because he doesn't look like me? The inspector blinked. I only meant, I know what you meant. Of course he's my brother. Inspector Williams held up his hands apologetically, but I was still seething. As much as Carter annoyed me, I hated it when people assumed we weren't related or looked at my father askance when he said the three of us were a family, like we'd done something wrong. Stupid Dr. Martin at the museum, Inspector Williams, it happened every time Dad and Carter and I were together. Every bloody time. I'm sorry, Sadie, the inspector said. I only want to make sure we separate the innocent from the guilty. It will go much easier for everyone if you cooperate. Any information, anything your father said, people he might have mentioned. Amos! I blurted out just to see his reaction. He met a man named Amos. Inspector Williams sighed. Sadie, he couldn't have done. Surely you know that. We spoke with Amos not an hour ago on the phone from his home in New York. He isn't in New York, I insisted. He's right. I glanced out the window and Amos was gone. Bloody typical. That's not possible, I said. Exactly, the inspector said. But he was there, I exclaimed. Who is he? One of Dad's colleagues? How did you know to call him? Really, Sadie, this acting must stop. Acting? The inspector studied me for a minute, then set his jaw as if he'd made a decision. We've already had the truth from Carter. I didn't want to upset you, but he told us everything. He understands there's no point protecting your father now. You might as well help us, and there will be no charges against you. You shouldn't lie to children, I yelled, hoping my voice carried all the way downstairs. Carter would never say a word against Dad, and neither will I. The inspector didn't even have the decency to look embarrassed. He crossed his arms. I'm sorry you feel that way, Sadie. I'm afraid it's time we went downstairs to discuss consequences with your grandparents. It's kind of a tricky situation because, I kind of get the inspector's point of view. Like, what's this crazy kid talking about? Of course none of that happened. But, I don't know, he's kind of taking it a little too far. And then, of course, obviously get Sadie's point of view because, yeah, that is what happened. She is telling the complete truth. Which actually is kind of rare in these type of books because usually the kids are like, shh, they're not going to believe me anyway. I'll just make up something they'll believe so they'll leave me alone. She's like, fuck it, I'm going to tell the truth. Alright, Chapter 4. Kidnapped by a not-so-stranger. Still narrated by Sadie. I just love family meetings. Very cozy with the Christmas garlands around the fireplace and a nice pot of tea and a detective from Scotland Yard ready to arrest you. Oh, I love it. Carter slumped on the sofa, cradling Dad's work bag. I wondered why the police had let him keep it. It should have been evidence or something, but the inspector didn't seem to notice it at all. Maybe there's something about it that makes it so that other people don't notice it. Carter looked awful. Even worse than usual. Honestly, the boy had never been in a proper school, and he dressed like a junior professor, with his khaki trousers and a button-down shirt and loafers. He's not bad-looking, I suppose. He's reasonably tall and fit, and his hair isn't hopeless. He's got Dad's eyes, and my mates Liz and Emma have even told me from his picture that he's hot, which I must take with a grain of salt because A, he's my brother, and B, my mates are a bit crazed. When it came to clothes, Carter wouldn't have known hot if it bit him on the button. On the bum. Not used to reading aloud when it's not, well, not used to reading aloud very often anyway, but when it's not written in American-style English. A little different. Oh, don't look at me like that, Carter. You know it's true. At any rate, I shouldn't have been too hard on him. He was taking Dad's disappearance even worse than I was. Probably because he lived with his dad? Just thought. Gran and Gramps sat on either side of him, looking quite nervous. The pot of tea and a plate of biscuits sat on the table, but no one was having any. Chief Inspector Williams ordered me into the only free chair. Then he paced in front of the fireplace importantly. 2 more police stood by the front door, the woman from earlier and a big bloke who kept eyeing the biscuits. Mr. and Mrs. Faust, Inspector Williams said, I'm afraid we have 2 uncooperative children. Gran fidgeted with the trim of her dress. It's hard to believe she's related to Mum. Gran is frail and colorless, like a stick person really. While Mum in the photos always looked so happy and full of life. They're just children, she managed. Surely you can't blame them. Pah, Gramps said. This is ridiculous, Inspector. They aren't responsible. Gramps is a former rugby player. He has beefy arms, a belly much too big for his shirt, and eyes sunk deep in his face, as if someone had punched them. Well, actually, Dad had punched them years ago, but that's another story. Really want to hear the story of Gramps and Graham getting her. Sounds interesting. Not like something that should go in the books necessarily, but an interesting spin-off story or something. Gramps is quite scary looking. People usually got out of his way, but Inspector Williams didn't seem impressed. Mr. Faust, he said, what do you imagine the morning headlines will read? British Museum attacked, Rosetta Stone destroyed. Your son-in-law, former son-in-law, Gramps corrected, was most likely vaporized in the explosion, or he ran off, in which case he didn't run off, I shouted. We need to know where he is, the inspector continued, and the only witnesses, your grandchildren, refused to tell me the truth. We did tell you the truth, Carter said. Dad isn't dead. He sank through the floor. Inspector Williams glanced at Gramps as if to say, there, you see? Then he turned to Carter. Young man, your father has committed a criminal act. He's left you behind to deal with the consequences. That's not true, I snapped, my voice trembling with rage. I couldn't believe Dad would intentionally leave us at the mercy of police. Of course. But the idea of him abandoning me, as I might have mentioned, that's a bit of a sore point. Dear, please, Gran told me. The inspector is only doing his job. Badly, I said. Let's all have some tea, Gran suggested. No, Carter and I yelled at once, which made me feel bad for Gran, as she practically wilted into the sofa. We can charge you, the inspector warned, turning on me. We can and we will. We can and we will. He froze. Then he blinked several times as if he'd forgotten what he was doing. Gramps frowned. Inspector? Yes, Chief Inspector Williams murmured dreamily. He reached in his pocket and took out a little blue booklet, an American passport. He threw it in Carter's lap. You're being deported, the inspector announced. You're to leave the country within 24 hours. If we need to question you further, you'll be contacted through the FBI. Carter's mouth fell open. He looked at me, and I knew I wasn't imagining how odd this was. The inspector had completely changed direction. He'd been about to arrest us, I was sure of it, and then out of the blue, he was deporting Carter. Even the other police officers looked confused. Sir, the policewoman asked, are you sure? Quite, Lindley. The 2 of you may go. The cops hesitated until Williams made a shooing motion with his hand. Then they left, closing the door behind them. Hold on, Carter said. My father's disappeared, and you want me to leave the country. Your father is either dead or a fugitive, son, the inspector said. Deportation is the kindest option. It's already been arranged. With whom? Gramps demanded. Who authorized this? With, the inspector got that funny blank look again. With the proper authorities. Believe me, it's better than prison. Funny blank look, sudden changing of mind. Someone's under a spell. Carter looked too devastated to speak, but before I could feel sorry for him, Inspector Williams turned to me. You too, miss. How did they not see that coming? Well, they're not used to the whole magic thing, and I may be able to recognize the signs of a spell, but characters and stories at the beginning of the story, yeah, it's understandable if they wouldn't. He might as well have hit me with a sledgehammer. You're deporting me? I asked. I live here. You're an American citizen, and under the circumstances, it's best for you to return home. I just stared at him. I couldn't remember any home except this flat. My mates at school, my room, everything I knew was here. Where am I supposed to go? Inspector, Gran said, her voice trembling. This isn't fair. I can't believe... I'll give you some time to say goodbye, the inspector interrupted. Then he frowned as if baffled by his own actions. I must be going. This made no sense, and the inspector seemed to realize it. But he walked to the front door anyway. When he opened it, I almost jumped out of my chair because the man in black, Amos, was standing there. He'd lost his trench coat and hat somewhere, but he was still wearing the same pinstriped suit and round glasses. His braided hair glittered with gold beads. I think I know who cast the spell. I thought the inspector would say something, or express surprise. But he didn't even acknowledge Amos. He walked right past him and into the night. Well, first of all, are you sure he knows what Amos looks like? Just because he said he talked to the guy doesn't mean he knows what he looks like. Amos came inside and closed the door. Gran and Gramps stood up. You, Gramps growled. I should have known. If I was younger, I would beat you to a pulp. They obviously know who he is. Hello, Mr. and Mrs. Faust, Amos said. He looked at Carter and me as if we were problems to be solved. It's time we had a talk. Amos made himself right at home. He flopped onto the sofa and poured himself tea. He munched on a biscuit, which was quite dangerous because Gran's biscuits are horrid. I thought Gramps' head would explode. His face went bright red. He came up behind Amos and raised his hand as if he were about to smack him. But Amos kept munching his biscuit. Please sit down, he told us. And we all sat. It was the strangest thing, as if we'd been waiting for his order. He got some weird magic about him. Even Gramps dropped his hand and moved round the sofa. He sat next to Amos with a disgusted sigh. Terrible. Almost skipped a paragraph. Amos sipped his tea and regarded me with some displeasure. That wasn't fair, I thought. I didn't look that bad considering what we'd been through. Then he looked at Carter and grunted. Terrible timing, he muttered. But there's no other way. They'll have to come with me. Excuse me? I said. I'm not going anywhere with some strange man with biscuit on his face. He did in fact have biscuit crumbs on his face, but he apparently didn't care as he didn't bother to check. I'm no stranger, Sadie, he said. Don't you remember? It was creepy hearing him talk to me in such a familiar way. I felt I should know him. I looked at Carter, but he seemed just as mystified as I was. No, Amos, Gran said, trembling. You can't take Sadie. We had an agreement. Julius broke that agreement tonight, Amos said. You know you can't care for Sadie anymore. Not after what's happened. Their only chance is to come with me. So, obviously the grandparents know, know at least a chunk of what's going on with the whole Egyptian magic and gods and whatnot. I really think something like involving that magic is what happened when their mom died. And that would explain, first, why the dad thought he could bring the mom back, because usually just normal deaths, magic is less inclined to bring back because they died naturally for a human. But if it involves magic, then sometimes magic can bring them back. And that would also explain why the grandparents seem to know so much about it, because they know what actually happened to their daughter. And I feel like their parents were involved in some sort of secret organization that, I don't know, maybe tries to minimize the impact of ancient Egyptian magic on the world as a whole. I'm not sure what organization, but definitely an organization. I really feel like they were part of some sort of organization involving Egyptian magic. And I feel like it's, to keep the world safe from type of thing, which would be there when Julius tried to bring the god of death, starts calling the god of death to bring back his wife. That's not so much on the protective side. So then, breaking the covenant of the group or whatever, and so I feel like that's kind of the way this story's going so far. Alright, so Julius broke the agreement. They apparently had some agreement that allowed Sadie to safely live with the grandparents that didn't know what was going on. Because obviously from some of the stories Carter told and whatnot, Julius and them were never really necessarily safe unless he kept traveling. Okay. Yeah, you can't care for Sadie anymore now after what happened tonight. The only chance is to come with me. Why should we go anywhere with you, Carter said. You almost got in a fight with Dad. Amos looked at the work bag in Carter's lap. I see you kept your father's bag. That's good. You'll need it. As for getting into fights, Julius and I did that quite a lot. If you didn't notice, Carter, I was trying to stop him from doing something rash. If he'd listened to me, we wouldn't be in this situation. I had no idea what he was on about, but Gramps apparently understood. You and your superstitions, he said. I told you we want none of it. So they know, but they don't really believe. Only insofar as they have to because it's been smack in their face. Amos pointed to the back patio. Through the glass doors, well, I can't even say in so much as it's been smack in their face, because I feel like there's been a lot more smack in their face than they actually believe. They're, that kind of people that, even if it's right here, I'm not going to believe it unless you physically shove it down my throat. Amos pointed to the back patio. Through the glass doors, you could see the lights shining on the Thames. It was quite a nice view at night, but you couldn't notice how run down some of the buildings were. Superstition, is it? Amos said, and yet you found a place to live on the east bank of the river. Apparently, that's significant. If I knew more about Egyptian mythology, I bet I would understand that symbolism. Gramps turned even redder. That was Ruby's idea. Thought it would protect us, but she was wrong about many things, wasn't she? She trusted Julius and you for one. Amos looked unfazed. He smelled interesting, like old-timey spices, copal, and amber, like the incense shops in Covent Garden. He finished his tea and looked straight at Gran. Mrs. Faust, you know what's begun. The police are the least of your worries. Gran swallowed. You changed that inspector's mind. You made him deport Sadie. It was that or see the children arrested, Amos said. Hang on, I said. You changed Inspector Williams's mind? How? Amos shrugged. It's not permanent. In fact, we should get to New York in the next hour or so before Inspector Williams begins to wonder why he let you go. Carter laughed incredulously. You can't get to New York from London in an hour. Not even the fastest plane. No, Amos agreed. Not a plane. Not a plane, but magic! He turned back to Gran as if everything had been settled. Mrs. Faust, Carter and Sadie have only one safe option. You know that. They'll come to the mansion in Brooklyn. I can protect them there. You've got a mansion, Carter said, in Brooklyn. Amos gave him an amused smile. The family mansion. You'll be safe there. But our dad is beyond your help for now, Amos said sadly. I'm sorry, Carter. I'll explain later. But Julius would want you to be safe. For that, we must move quickly. I'm afraid I'm all you've got. That was a bit harsh, I thought. Carter glanced at Graham and Gramps. Then he nodded glumly. He knew that they didn't want him around. He'd always reminded them of our dad. And yes, it was a stupid reason not to take in your grandson, but there you are. Well, Carter can do what he wants, I said, but I live here, and I'm not going off with some stranger, am I? I looked to Gran for support, but she was staring at the lace dollies on the table as if they were suddenly quite interesting. Gramps, surely. But he wouldn't eat my eyes either. He turned to Amos. You can get them out of the country? Hang on, I protested. Amos stood and wiped the crumbs off his jacket. He walked to the patio doors and stared out at the river. The police will be back soon. Tell them anything you like. They won't find us. You're going to kidnap us? I asked, stunned. I looked at Carter. Do you believe this? Carter shouldered the work bag. Then he stood like he was ready to go. Possibly he just wanted to be out of Gran and Gramps' flat. How do you plan to get in New York in an hour? He asked Amos. You said not a plane. No, Amos agreed. He put his finger to the window and traced something in the condensation. Another bloody hieroglyph. Interesting one. Yeah, but I gotta remember I gotta do this. So, kind of like a hand. That one kind of makes me think of a boat. Which would be a good symbol for travel back then. You weren't gonna have a plane as a symbol for travel, that's for sure. A boat, I said, then realized I'd translated aloud, which I wasn't supposed to be able to do. Well, no, but I said I thought it looked like a boat, and you're talking about travel, so that's kind of going to naturally come to mind. Amos peered over the top of his round glasses. How did you... I mean, that last bit looks like a boat, I blurted out, but that can't be what you mean. That's ridiculous. Look, Carter cried. I pressed in next to him at the patio doors. Down at the quayside, a boat was docked, but not a regular boat, mind you. It was an Egyptian reed boat with 2 torches burning in the front and a big rudder in the back. Magic. A figure in a black trench coat and hat, possibly Amos's, stood at the tiller. I'll admit, for once, I was at a loss for words. We're going in that, Carter said. To Brooklyn. We'd better get started, Amos said. I whirled back to my grandmother. Gran, please! She brushed a tear from her cheek. It's for the best, my dear. You should take Muffin. Ah, yes, Amos said. We can't forget the cat. He turned towards the stairs. As if on cue, Muffin raced down in a leopard-spotted streak and leapt into my arms. She never does that. Who are you? I asked Amos. It was clear I was running out of options, but I at least wanted answers. We can't just go off with some stranger. I'm not a stranger, Amos smiled at me. I'm family. And suddenly I remembered his face smiling down at me saying, Happy birthday, Sadie. A memory so distant I'd almost forgotten. Uncle Amos? I asked hazily. That's right, Sadie, he said. I'm Julius's brother. Now come along. We have a long way to go. I did not peg him for their uncle. I was thinking old family friend, not uncle. You know, that family friend that you call uncle, but not like legitly uncle. Older or younger brother, I wonder. So, yeah. Interesting. Let's see. The next chapter, we're at the chapter 5 now, and it's narrated by Carter, and I'm thinking what I might do is, yeah, it looks like it's 2 chapters narrated by one, then 2 chapters narrated by the other, and so I think that's how I'm going to split my videos up, so that I'm not narrating 2 different people in the same video. So, that was the 2 chapters narrated by Sadie. They were a little shorter. Maybe her chapters will be shorter. That's just how her chapters are. But so I'm gonna stop this video there, and next time we'll start back up with Carter. Yeah. Interesting things going on. They're going to end up with some kind of magic. Of that, I am like, sure. They will end up with some kind of magic. But yeah, this is going to be a lot of videos. I'm really, really excited to see where this goes, though. And I guess next chapter we're off to Brooklyn. So that should be interesting. I want to know the significance of the cat. I mean, I know cats are like really important in Egypt, and so, and there's got to be significance to the fact that it's spotted like a leopard and a little different looking. So that, in addition to the whole longer lifespan thing, really makes me feel like, well, I mean, I guess not necessarily a way long lifespan, except it seems like it was an adult when it was given to her 6 years ago, so it should be getting old, but the impression is that it's not. Although that came from Carter, so I mean, he doesn't see the cat very often. But anyway, just the different aspects of the cat and the, oh, we have to take the cat with us. There's something significant about the cat. I feel like it might be a protective creature of some kind. Like, maybe be able to transform into a huge cat that can rip people that are trying to kill them to shreds or something. I don't know. But there's definitely a protective aspect in there, I would say. So I'm excited to see where that goes. So yeah, this is a good series, and I can't wait to continue it. This is Dire Wolf. See you next time.